forward. Little
Yeah,
Richard, Wembley Stadium, 1971, as I seem to remember.
Yeah, and now Little Richard, the second time I met him, right? He goes out and plays, and of course, I said in the back there was all kinds of people talking. He's there expounding how great he is. He says, "You know, I'm not just a rock and roll singer. I can sing opera. I can sing anything." And he's singing, "Oh, solo me," you know. And honestly, the reporters and everybody around him was getting a little annoyed because he said, "You know, I really invented rock and roll. I did everything. It was me. I'm the one, you know." So Jerry Lee Lewis is back there too. And at that time, Jerry Lee Lewis had a hit. He had a hit in England. I don't know if it was in the States or not, but he had a pretty big hit. You know, he got up from the table and he walks over to Little Richard and he says, "Excuse me, who has the hit record right now?" Little Richard just looks at him. And Jerry Lee Lewis just walked away. He just shut him right up. You know, and then of course all the reporters left and everything, and they went over to Jerry Lee Lewis. You know, and they thought, "Oh yeah, this is the guy with the hit record. Let's interview him." You know, and Bill Haley was kind of the peacemaker. Bill Haley didn't want to see any fighting. You know, and he would say like, "Hey, Lake, we're all friends here. You know, we all started this thing. You know, can't we just get along? You know, can we all just get along?" Yeah. Nobody was really fighting except Little Richard was a big braggart. That was really it.
But he left. He abandoned ship, and then he wanted to come back.
Oh yeah. He left because he wanted to become a preacher. You know, and of course, you know, and then the U.S. audience kind of forgot about the originals for a while, and they became. A funny thing, when we went back to England the second time, now Bill hadn't been there for a number of years, and this is 62, 57, he said, "Are they going to remember me?" We got off the plane, no big crowds, no big thing, and he was a little down, but when we went to the venues, theaters, they were jammed. And we were on with Spencer Davis and other groups, and Spencer Davis had the top billing. We closed the first half of the show, Spencer Davis closed the second half of the show. And this is well documented. But during the Spencer Davis show, the audience started yelling, "Bill Haley, Bill Haley, Bill." So they switched it, even though the posters, which I have, didn't switch. We ended up ending the show because the people that were there in '57, they were now in their 20s. They wanted the memories. They wanted to hear the original songs, which I thought was fitting that you go back to the beginning to end it. That's what they wanted. Yeah, they wanted to hear the British Goose. They heard them all the time. They enjoyed them, but they wanted to hear the guy that started rock and roll, that brought it to London. So we ended the show.
Part of the reason we're doing this is not just so you can talk about. Part of the reason real reason we're doing this, as well as family and that kind of thing, posterity and history, is that there is going to come a time, without trying to be morose, there's going to come a time when a lot of the people that you and I grew up with will simply no longer be around. Sure. Including your favorite Bob Dylan, Mr. Coherency himself. Because I know that you really like him.
Yes, I love Bob Dylan. Yes.
It's his ability to enunciate properly.
Great songwriter. Great songwriter.
But in all seriousness, all kidding aside, there's going to be a time when a lot of these people will no longer be around.
Right.
That you and I used to have a conversation where you said rap was only two elements of the three elements that need to make up music: rhythm, harmony, and
a melody.
Melody, but it only had two of the three.
So it's poetry, much like the beatniks. Poetry set the music.
Yes, it is, but it's a bit different. Do you see it as a bit of a dumbing down of culture?
Well, yeah, I'm not an expert on it because I really don't listen to it. It doesn't interest me. I mean, evidently they're talking about everyday things, and I understand some of it's a lot of profanity, and a lot of it is putting down of women and calling them whores, and that's not music to me. But I'm just not a fan, so I'm not a person that asked about that.
But where is the next wave of singing? The next Elvis, Haley, the next
country.
People who were as innovative as Bob Dylan or the Rolling Stones or the Beach Boys.
I think country folk are the people they call Americana. I think that is because it's all melding. There is no, except with the jazz is still jazz and classical music is still classic, but rock and roll has diversified in so many different ways. There's so many elements in everything that I think what they call Americana music is really, really the next thing that's going to be remembered. Pop is pop. Pop means you're here and you're gone. If you see pop music today, what do they have? 4-line melody and a bunch of dancers. It's showbiz. It's show.
Can't debate that.
It's show. But with Americana music, you're still listening to the words. You're still listening to the musicianship. You're still listening to the story of the music. There's still, used to be folk, it was all separated. Folk, rock, blues, but now it's even melded even more. Even jazz is in there. I'm not talking about...
You know what they say, jazz isn't dead, it just smells funny.
I mean, jazz is still in there because you have better players. Before in the 50s, a jazz player wouldn't be caught dead playing rock and roll. You wouldn't play three chord changes.
But the guy who played before you was a jazz player, and he didn't get the gig. And
He didn't get it. But it's funny because I used to go into clubs when I was a kid and in my own band, and hear jazz musicians trying to play rock and roll, and they would go like. I don't have a guitar, but I'll do it vocally. Hear something like, down Louisiana, close to New Orleans, Johnny B, hey, Johnny B, good guitar solo. You know what I'm saying? They didn't know how to play rock. And the people in the audience would go, there's something wrong with that. But they would, and you would hear like, do-do-do-do-do-do. They play all these multiple chord changes where they're supposed to be chord one, And they would throw in all these, and
what's the joke about that?
And they'd understand why the people weren't digging it. Because when you play rock and roll, you play rock and roll. When you play jazz, you play jazz. You got to learn to separate it. You say, so when I do something, I do kind of a song. I do a song called Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda on my show. And I say, this is kind of a jazz blues. So the solo I play on it is a jazz solo. People expect to hear a jazz solo because that's what I said. This is kind of a jazz blues song. So they hear that, and you got to set the audience up to know what they're going to hear. I say, oh, here's a folk kind of a folk song. So they expect to hear that kind of a song, and people are not all musicians out there, but once they're set up to listen to it. When I left Haley, okay, a lot of people ask me what you're going to ask me.
What have you done? You've been involved in teaching. You've been involved in video.
Well,
production.
when I left Haley, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. Right? Happened to be a guy, Tony Fusco, was opening a music shop in Claymont, where I was from, and he said, "Do you want to teach guitar?" Well, I never taught guitar in my life, and I said, "Geez, I got to make some money." Yeah, I'll teach you. I didn't know whether I could teach. So he advertised it, with Haley and everything, and I wound up with 80 students, and I loved teaching. I just loved to teach.
Yeah.
And I said, well, gee, I can teach it.
You're directly involved in that now.
Oh yeah, I'm still doing
your
that.
own videos.
Yeah, I have my own band, JK Rockets. We're doing the nostalgia thing, and my brother is the drummer and practically my agent, and he played ironically when he was growing up with all black. He was the only white guy. He played with all black groups. So through him in this group, I have Paul and Roberta Wilson. He was a member of the Tramps, Burn Baby Burn, Disco Inferno, and she opened up for the Temptations. A great voice. So it's full circle. So we're doing, and I do some country things, and I do the rock. So we're doing the Haley things, we're doing the black things, and it's like the audience is hearing all the elements that came together apart. Like here's a part of. In fact, we do Shake, Rattle, and Roll like the Joe Turner's version, which is the original way.
I do remember that from last couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, which were considered too risque. Oh, we couldn't play this on white radio. What was it? Here Come My Baby. No, what was he? Shake, Rattle, and Roll. Get out in the kitchen, rattle loose pots and pans. He said, get out of that bed. So he was, I'm like a one-eyed cat. sleeping in the floor, that the same. And he would go like, I believe you were coming from the devil, and now I know. Well, oh, you couldn't say that. Because the more I work, the faster my way. He says, so Bill Haley changed it to, I believe you were doing me wrong. But you couldn't say, I believe you were born of the devil, and now I know. So we're doing it that way, the way Joe Turner wrote it, which is completely acceptable today.
For the people who are studying with you now, what's the thing you emphasize the most?
Well, for a lot of my students are adults who say, I wish I would have played. I have some kids, but what do I emphasize the most? Theory.
You got to be kidding! Really?
Theory.
Really?
I say theory because once you learn how something works, you can make it anything you want. Once you know what the simple chord changes, why 1, 4, 5, how it relates, what the 3 minor chords are, you can switch them around. And when they get to a point and they learn a song, say they learn what's a good 1, 6, 4, 5 song?
Stand By Me?
Yeah, perfect. Stand By Me. They learn it. They learn to play it. And I'll say now, and I teach them all the positions on the guitar. And I say, okay, take Stand By Me and make your own song out of it. Well, how can I do that? Use it as a basis. And then turn it around a little bit. So how do we do that? Instead of going 1, 6, 4, 5, how about 1, 5, 6, 5? Well, it's not done that. You can do that. Just do it. And the 50% will come back and say, look, I made this up from that song. It's not Stand By Me anymore. It's a different. I said, that's how songs are created.
Do you teach them how to read first before you
Oh,
teach them
yeah.
how to
Well,
play?
no, it depends. If it's an adult and says, I just want to learn to play and strum and sing, and gradually I sneak it in the back door.
So music is a language. Most people learn how to speak before they learn how to read and write.
Right. So there's somebody who's been playing for 20 years and just fooling around with the guitar. And then I start teaching theory. Here's what you're really doing. And then I put a piece of sheet music there. I said, can you read that note? No. I said, well, that's a C note. Well, what makes it a C note? And I say, well, then I explain, well, this is a staff. So I teach them to read, but not really knowing that they're reading. And all of a sudden, I have a student that's never read before. He's transposing keys. He's writing it down. He says, well, you mean if I move a C note up to a D note and put 2 sharps, now it's in a new key? I said, yeah. All you got to do is whatever's in the space, move to the next line. Whatever in the 9, move to the next space. As long as you have two sharps there, the F and the C sharp, it's going to be in the new key.
Do you ever get them playing with the actual recording of things they're learning?
Oh yeah. Oh, I insist on that. I say, go home and listen to the song and try to play along with it. I said, because once music is like starting a race. Once that clock stops, you cannot stop. You can't go back and say, start the race again. If you make a mistake, forget the note. That's the hardest thing to do. You can't play it again. You made a mistake. You make a mental note. I played that note wrong, but you keep going. I says, I had a teacher, his name was Hal Schiff, greatest teacher I ever had. Not my personal guitar teacher. He was the dance band teacher in high school. He says, you know the difference, John, between a professional and an amateur? I said, no. This is the difference. When an amateur makes a mistake, you know it.
That's very true.
When a professional makes a mistake, you're not sure. You say, I guess he wanted to do that. I never forgot that. Got to cut it?
No,
Well,
just
I'm
finish
getting
up.
the time sign.
Okay, well, this has been really good and very
Okay.
informative. Just in closing, you're still teaching, still performing.
And I still intend to do that because I love doing it. Now it's fun. I don't have to impress anybody. People come to see me. I know what they're there to see. They're there to see the roots. And I give them the story I give you.
That's why we're
This is
doing
where it
this.
came from.
And for those who care to check the facts, folks, you might want to take a look at that. Isn't that great?
Turn a little more this way. The other way. Okay, J.K. Rockets. Yeah. And it says it all.
It's
You're
never
never too old to rock.
It's never too late to
It's never too late to rock.
Well, thanks,
Right.
John. We salvaged it.
My pleasure.
You're
And,
awesome.
pretend you're an Englishman. You came on German. Go off English.
As thing, but Johnny K and the Rock says tonight it's got having all the Wembley Stadium now is Mick and Rod and all that.
You're
And
so
he's
English,
got-
we can't understand you.
Well, that's the thing is sort of John has sort of gone to 11. It's a lot of he goes to 11. The thing is painted all in the amplifier. He's got that. Well, the thing was the Mick was more gay because you understand
Hey.
what he was saying from start to finish.
I'm leaving.